they're taking the word of a guy that murdered 4 of our best and bravest and putting them in front of court martials because he says that he got punched in the nose. I defended a similar case to that called the Haditha case. I'll talk to you about that in a minute when I was at the Thomas More Law Center. But it's really discussing some of the things that happened. Anyway, in Fallujah, it was a horrible place. If any of you watch the History Channel, it reminded me a lot of the first convoy I went in there of Berlin after World War II. It was, every house was destroyed, every building was leveled. That's where Al-Qaeda in Iraq stood their ground, and they did stand their ground. There were thousands of bad guys in that, and we killed a lot of bad guys, thousands of them. I can tell you I processed many of the bad guys we had there. A lot of them were not Iraqis. They were Sudanese, Saudis, Egyptians, a lot of Syrians, all there to fight the infidel, us. They were told by their imam, many of them, when we were interrogating them, that they were 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, saying that it was their Muslim responsibility to go fight the infidel in Iraq. I remember a general telling us early on, he said, look, I'd rather fight the away game than the home game. And so that kind of reminded me of the away game in Iraq, because we were fighting that enemy. Now, Zarqawi squirted out of Fallujah before we got him. We eventually did kill Zarqawi in an airstrike, but he told all his men to stand and fight in Fallujah, and then he himself left. My primary task after the fighting was over, and while the fighting was going on, is to set up a humanitarian assistance site there in an old CIA park called Jolan Park. During the Iran-Iraq War, we set up this big amusement park. It was kind of surreal. It had rides that had United States written all over them, and our CIA built it as a measure of goodwill during the Iran-Iraq War. We kind of made it into this crazy amusement park with concertina wire everywhere to filter the people in and out. We had about 30,000 refugees 20 miles north of the city that we had to bring back into the city, give them food, shelter, clothing, and try to figure out how to start their lives over again. And the biggest fear I had was there were a lot of choke points in that city. There were a lot of choke points in repopulating the city. I thought it would be a great opportunity target for a suicide bomb. Luckily, and not just due to luck, but a lot of planning and younger Marines that I put a lot of trust in, we didn't have anybody get killed, and we were able to repopulate that city. And in the end, they made that into a polling station, and we had the highest, in the first vote, we had the highest people in Al Anbar province polling out of there. And so I left Fallujah after that, and I went back to the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing and finished up my time in Iraq. The last thing I believe I participated in the first vote we had there, and that was an awesome thing to be a part of. I said at the Tea Party when they let me speak for a minute, I said, I was in Fallujah fighting for freedom for people that had never really had freedom before. And I said I didn't want to come home. I was shocked when I came home that, eventually some of those freedoms would be eroded right here at home. A lot of people talk about, that old saying, are you better off than you were 2-4 years ago? You can ask yourself that, but you got to also ask yourself this question. Are you more free than you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? We're not. And that when you have a country built upon we the people, and the people are masters of the government, and the government sees the role the other way around, then that's why the American people are a little scared and upset, because that's not what Americans are all about. Came back from Iraq, I finished up my tour duty there. I was the chief prosecutor again. Last case I had was a murder trial. So I did a lot of different cases in the Marine Corps, the whole gamut from murder to rape, the whole 9 yards. In fact, that case was an interesting case because it ended up being a suicide case that was initially pinned on a Marine that didn't do it. So I actually, one of the last things I did was advise the commanding general to drop the charges against that Marine. And it was a hard call because you have to tell a parent that his son committed suicide, but all the evidence showed that he did that. It was a difficult time, but sometimes, and I was known as a hammer in the Marine Corps as a prosecutor. I had very little tolerance for guys that would go UA or miss a movement or any of those sorts of things. But as a prosecutor, you have a duty to the court to protect the rule of law and protect the people that come under those courts. So I was thinking of getting out of the Marine Corps. My wife and I just had our first baby, and again, my priorities changed. Just like after 9/11, when you become a father. Anybody